Thanks, Anya. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us here today. So today's our next topic is going to be on navigating DEI challenges with finesse. So I'll give a quick intro about myself. My name is Nikkei, and I'm currently the Director of Service Delivery here at Diversio. What that entails is essentially helping organizations move the needle on their DEI strategies and initiatives through strategic advisory, training, and certifications for professionals and organizations as well. Without further ado, let's jump into the agenda on the next slide. So today we'll begin with exploring the current landscape of DEI efforts. In an ever-changing world, understanding the current state of affairs is essential for crafting effective strategies. So we'll highlight trends and developments that'll shape our journey towards a more inclusive future. Next, we'll dive into challenges to advancing DEI initiatives. So we'll identify and acknowledge some of these challenges, which is a first step to overcoming them, discuss common obstacles, and offer a perspective on what stands in the way of progress and how we can navigate these hurdles with finesse. And speaking of finesse, our session will then transition into navigating these challenges with finesse. And here we'll walk through practical advice and strategies to address DEI challenges effectively, so you can expect to gain actionable insights that can be applied within your organizations, ensuring that your DEI efforts yield tangible results. We'll then explore initiatives that drive impact. So we know it's not just about checking boxes, it's about creating real and lasting change. So we'll discuss a couple of key initiatives that can drive meaningful impact for employees and organizations at large. And then last, but certainly not least, we will uncover data's role in making lasting changes. So in today's data-driven world, understanding the importance of data and shaping our DEI strategies is paramount. So here we'll review ways in which data can inform and strengthen our efforts, ensuring that they endure over time. So I'm confident today's session will be both enlightening and empowering for HR teams and people leaders or folks that just want to learn more to advance DEI initiatives successfully and make a meaningful impact. So in our current landscape, we know that there is increased awareness and progression. So DEI initiatives, I'll start off level setting, refer to programs and activities to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. These initiatives can encompass various efforts, including cultural awareness, equitable hiring practices, and inclusive work environments. So many organizations truly recognize the importance of DEI initiatives in fostering diverse and inclusive workplaces. And today, many of them are actively running various DE&I initiatives. We can attribute this to increased awareness, so being more aware of the need and actively working on the initiatives. But also there's a bit of a legislative and guideline angle where governments and increasingly industry bodies are issuing more comprehensive laws and guidelines aimed at promoting DEI, including requirements for reporting on diversity metrics. So despite the widespread recognition of their importance, only a small fraction of organizations have mature DEI initiatives. So approximately 8% of North American organizations can be considered to have mature DEI initiatives. So these organizations have a competitive advantage when it comes to market positioning, agility, innovation, and also in decreasing reputational, operational, or strategic risk, and overall improving employee retention rates. So it's important to note that organizations invest in DEI initiatives because they recognize the tangible benefits they bring, including performance, talent attraction, innovation, and risk mitigation. However, many are still nascent, beginning their journey in the space or facing internal challenges such as a lack of strategic alignment, insufficient resources on both a budget and personnel perspective, and also inconsistent implementation and other factors. So I want to share a statistic from a McKinsey study. So companies that are in the top quartile for racial and ethnic diversity are 36% more likely to have financial returns above their respective industry medians. The bottom line here is that organizations with highly diverse workplaces that are driven by robust DEI initiatives outperform their peers. But that's not without some challenges. So let's dive into some of the challenges faced by HR and DEI teams. So HR and DEI professionals face various constraints and challenges as they work to advance DEI initiatives within organizations. These constraints can vary depending on the organization's size, the industry, and the cultural practices, but some common ones include a lack of leadership commitment and insufficient resources. So we know DEI initiatives require a strong, if we could just go back to the previous slide. Thank you. We know DEI initiatives require strong support from leadership. So when leaders aren't fully committed to DEI efforts, it can hinder progress. And we know leaders serve as role models for employees. So if leaders do not demonstrate inclusive behaviors or actively engage in DEI efforts, it can create a disconnect between the organization's stated values and its actual practices. So employees may perceive DEI as insincere or inconsequential when they don't see the tone set from the top. With respect to HR professionals, without leadership buy-in, they may struggle to enforce diversity and inclusion targets, and there might actually be a lack of consequences for non-compliance. So because we know DEI initiatives are not short-term projects, but long-term cultural shifts, there is a really important need for sustained leadership commitment. When we think about insufficient resources, we know resource constraints can hinder DEI initiatives within organizations, and this can kind of impede progress in several ways, including limited training and education, lack of data and measurement tools, reduced recruitment efforts, insufficient staffing, fewer inclusive policies and programs, and lack of monitoring and accountability. So resource constraints can be challenging. However, with strategic planning, effective advocacy, and a commitment to DEI as a core value, organizations can make meaningful progress towards creating a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive workplace. Inadequate data and measurement can also significantly hinder diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in organizations. So data and measurement are essential components of a successful DEI strategy because they provide us with insights into the current state. It allows us to track progress and inform decision-making. So lack of adequate data can impede DEI efforts in many ways, and I'll just name a couple here. So a lack of baseline understanding. So in order to address DEI issues effectively, organizations need a clear understanding of their current diversity landscape. And inadequate data means there's no baseline information about the representation in the workforce. And without it, it's challenging to identify disparities and set realistic goals for improvement. Another challenge here is inability to identify problem areas. So an inability to help pinpoint areas where diversity and inclusion challenges exist. For example, in hiring, promotion rates, pay, or employee satisfaction across demographic groups. A lack of data and measurement also creates difficulties in setting targets and goals, and also presents a lack of accountability because we know what gets measured gets done. And so data provides the foundation for accountability. And without clear data on DEI metrics, it's challenging to uphold departments or to hold departments, leaders, or individuals accountable for their roles in advancing these efforts. So investing in data collection, analysis, and transparency is essential for building a strong foundation and for successful DEI efforts. Employee burnout and overload is another one that I really wanted to touch on today. So HR employee burnout and overload can significantly impede these initiatives in several ways. We know that professionals may experience burnout or overload when tasked with managing DEI efforts in addition to their regular day-to-day HR responsibilities. Now, these should be integrated in a way, but at times initiatives come on side of desk, and it's important to recognize that burnout can lead to reduced capacity for DEI work. It can create diminished engagement, so decreased job satisfaction and engagement among HR professionals. It can lead to errors in oversights. So burnout can lead to mistakes in data collection, analysis, reporting, or program implementation, which can undermine the credibility and effectiveness of these efforts. And finally, it negatively impacts employee well-being. So HR professionals are often responsible for wearing many different hats, including employee well-being and mental health initiatives. But when HR professionals are burnt out themselves, they may be less effective in addressing the mental health and well-being needs of the workforce, including those related to DEI challenges. So in conclusion, HR employee burnout and overload can pose significant obstacles to the successful implementation of these initiatives that we are excited to lead and run. However, by addressing these challenges through resource allocation, training, delegation, and support, organizations can ensure HR professionals have the capacity and motivation to drive meaningful progress in advancing DEI. So addressing these constraints often requires a multifaceted approach that involves educating and engaging, aligning DEI efforts to business goals, and securing leadership buy-in, but also continuously monitoring and adapting strategies to ensure progress. In a nutshell, organizations should foster a culture of inclusion and diversity at all levels to create an environment where DEI initiatives can thrive. So navigating the multifaceted challenges of DEI with finesse begins with effective communication. So to surmount any sort of resistance and secure leadership commitment, HR and DEI professionals must master the art of communicating the value of DEI, which involves crafting a compelling narrative that illustrates the positive impact of diversity on innovation, decision-making, and market relevance. So presenting a strong business case grounded in data and metrics demonstrates how DEI contributes to organizational success. And by effectively conveying the tangible benefits of DEI to leadership and stakeholders, we can overcome obstacles to ensure that DEI initiatives are not just a moral imperative or a nice to have, but a strategic imperative aligned with business objectives. So we know sustainable progress in diversity, equity, and inclusion is often achieved through a series of incremental changes. So by setting clear, achievable goals and celebrating small wins along the way, organizations can steadily advance their DEI initiatives. These incremental steps allow for the gradual transformation of workplace culture and help to build momentum and maintain commitment. So we're not going to achieve this in a day or in a year. It is a sustained effort over time. And each small victory really serves as a stepping stone towards a broader, more inclusive organizational practices that foster long-term sustainable progress that aligns with the organization's core values and objectives. So on to the next piece here. So we know that external factors such as economic downturns, industry-specific challenges, and external events such as pandemics can divert attention and resources away from DEI initiatives. So in cases like these, organizations can apply a strategic approach that enables them to do more with less. So a few examples here are leveraging partnerships. So DEI teams can amplify their impact with limited resources by embracing the power of partnerships and collaboration. So through fostering alliances with other departments, organizations, or even community groups, they can really tap into the additional expertise, resources, and networks. So partnerships ultimately help spread the responsibility for DEI efforts across a broader spectrum and ensures that the workload is distributed effectively. And can be quite beneficial when resources are scarce. Utilizing and prioritizing company resources effectively is key as well. So DEI teams can maximize this impact even with limited resources by identifying and harnessing the existing assets that may exist within your organization. So these are things like employee skills, internal programs, or available technologies. And by aligning these resources with your DEI goals, teams can actually create cost-effective initiatives that drive meaningful change. And then prioritization comes on at the back of that to ensure that efforts are focused on areas with the greatest potential for impact, which optimize resource allocation. And finally here, we know our employees are our biggest asset. So DEI teams can achieve substantial progress with limited resources by harnessing the power of employee engagement and advocacy. When employees become passionate allies in the quest for diversity, equity, and inclusion, their collective efforts can amplify the impact of DEI initiatives. So to do this, we encourage open dialogue, provide education and training, and empower individuals to champion the cause. And DEI teams can create a ripple effect that extends throughout the organization. So again, these are just a few examples of how you can do more with less and continue to drive impact. And in the next section, we'll get into initiatives that can drive impact. So, in our discussions around initiatives that drive impact, we need to shift our perspective. It's really common to focus on inputs such as the number of mentorship programs or sponsorships. However, for true progress, we should adopt a strategic approach. So, let's envision what success will look like 5 years from now or 10 years from now. Define clear metrics to monitor our progress and prioritize programs that deliver tangible and measurable outcomes. So, this shift in thinking will help us drive meaningful change and create more inclusive and equitable workplaces. As we assess the impact of our diversity programs, it's essential to employ a comprehensive approach. So, what does this mean? This means that we evaluate effectiveness through tangible metrics such as promotions, retention rates, and advancement statistics. However, on the flip side, it's also equally crucial to gather qualitative data. So, incorporating participant testimonials and assessment. Many of you likely will run employee satisfaction surveys. So, this qualitative data will provide insights into participants' perspectives on their career growth, as well as their development of cultural and diversity competencies. So, by combining both quantitative and qualitative measures, we gain a holistic understanding of our program's effectiveness and their impact on our organization's D&I journey. And finally, collecting statistics is a powerful tool for driving meaningful change. So these statistics can unveil disparities among employees and serve as a foundation for very targeted improvements. Key factors for data collection may encompass age, race, gender, sexual orientation, education, job level, work shift, and tenure within the organization, among many others. And by leveraging these statistics, we actually gain really valuable insights that empower us to address disparities and advance towards a more equitable and inclusive workplace. So, as discussed previously, by collecting data from primary resources, companies can interpret pain points and create actionable DEI insights. This can be done through DEI assessments, such as through the Diversio platform. It can be done through inclusive communication internally and externally, and really propelled by creating feedback and accountability mechanisms. So there are several implementation tactics for DEI initiatives that we can draw upon for meaningful impact. We have a couple here on screen. This is by no means comprehensive, but I think they cover a broad spectrum of some of the challenges that organizations face today. So in the context of recruiting and hiring, achieving diversity and inclusion can be challenging when a single group dominates the workforce. So in such scenarios, relying solely on a referral-based employment approach can perpetuate cultural homogeneity and hinder efforts to diversify the talent pool. So in order to truly foster diversity in organizations, need to look at adopting inclusive recruitment strategies that actively seek out and attract candidates from a variety of backgrounds and experiences to ensure a more balanced and representative workforce. So evidence overwhelmingly points to inherent unfairness and bias in the recruiting process. Astonishingly, even a candidate's name can trigger prejudice. And as research has shown, individuals with more common names receive a striking 50% more interview invitations. So this troubling revelation underscores the very urgent need for organizations to recognize and address systemic biases in their recruitment processes and ensure that talent selection is based on merit and qualifications rather than factors beyond an applicant's control, such as their name or their ethnicity and other factors like that. When we think of mentorship programs, I think it's noteworthy that minorities who constituted 32% of respondents in this study placed a heightened emphasis on the significance of mentoring for their careers. So this surpassed the average respondent at 27%, which underscores the crucial role that mentorship plays in promoting D&I. So in certain instances, mentorship programs have demonstrated a remarkable 72% increase in retention rates among program mentees. And these statistics just really highlight the tangible benefits of mentorship initiatives, not only for individual career growth, but also for enhancing retention rates and fostering greater diversity within organizations. And the fourth one here is around inclusive policies and practices. So an essential aspect of fostering fairness and diversity within an organization involves a comprehensive examination and revision of existing company rules and practices. So this may encompass substantial changes to hiring procedures, re-looking at your performance appraisals or your promotion processes. So by proactively reevaluating and updating these aspects, organizations can create a more equitable and inclusive environment, reducing biases and barriers that may inadvertently hinder diversity and fairness in the workplace, and advance their perspectives forward here. Now we'll get into the data perspective. So we know what gets measured gets done. We are primarily data driven. And so data plays a pivotal role in making changes, lasting changes within organizations. So in the quest to move the needle on DEI progress, organizations need to recognize the significance of various types of data. So what you see here is three key types of data here: diversity, which encompasses demographic information and provides insights into representation. We have equity, which includes promotions, departures, and pay equity information, which helps us essentially gauge fairness and opportunities for advancement. And then inclusion data, which is our sentiments, which are derived from employee experience and engagement assessments. And these essentially paint a very vivid picture of our organization's cultural inclusivity. So together, these data types serve as our compass, guiding us towards a more equitable, diverse, and inclusive future. And in a nutshell, by analyzing disparities across these data points, setting informed goals, and tracking progress, data empowers us to hold ourselves accountable and identify root causes of DEI challenges. It also allows us to assess program impact and enhance transparency, and ensures fair practices, continuous improvement, and serves as our ongoing sustainability for DEI change within our organization. So DEI, it's used for, this is basically summarizing what I just spoke to. So it's used for understanding strengths and weaknesses, tracking progress over time, and guiding key and targeted interventions, and informing choices. Now let's get into the inclusion metrics. So Diversio's inclusion metrics are a proprietary 6-part inclusion framework used to assess systemic biases and barriers in the workplace. We do this through a survey collection of information on identity, demographics, employee experience, and employee position within their organization. This inclusion metrics framework was actually developed with a robust set of metrics over 2 years in consultation with government bodies, industry bodies, equity-seeking group associations, academics, senior executives, and more, and has been validated across 500 organizations and 100,000 employees globally. My apologies. So these metrics include inclusive culture, career development, fair management, workplace flexibility, workplace safety, and recruiting and hiring processes, and they provide a comprehensive view of an organization's commitment to inclusion. So inclusive culture, as an example, helps evaluate the overall environment. Career development measures the opportunities available to employees. Fair management gauges equitable leadership practices. Workplace flexibility assesses work-life balance and accommodation. And workplace safety ensures physical and emotional well-being, including psychological safety. And recruiting and hiring, pretty straightforward, ensures diversity in the talent pipeline. So collectively, these metrics enable organizations to identify strengths and areas for improvement, guiding efforts to foster a more inclusive workplace. I'll close us off with some ROI stats here. So it's crucial to underscore the compelling case for investing in DEI. So while the benefits go far beyond financial metrics, it's undeniable that such investments yield a robust return on investment. So a commitment to DEI positively impacts profitability, as you can see, by driving innovation and expanding market reach. It reduces attrition rates by fostering a more inclusive workplace, and really fuels revenue growth through diverse perspectives and ideas. It's also important to consider the risk management aspects of DEI. So what we have on the right side of the screen here. So DEI isn't just a moral commitment, it's a strategic move that helps organizations mitigate the very real risks associated with increased social exposure after a scandal, or potential loss in shareholder value, and the departure of our biggest asset, which is our employees. So the departure of talented employees. So by proactively embracing DEI, organizations can create a more resilient and responsive corporate culture, reducing the likelihood of reputational damage, and additionally fostering a diverse and inclusive workplace can enhance shareholder value by driving innovation and revenue growth. And our third point here, DEI efforts help bolster employee retention, reducing the risk of losing valuable talent. So I've just said a lot, but I will conclude so we can get into Q&A. But in conclusion, DEI investment serves as a powerful, powerful safeguard against potential challenges, making it a sound choice for both ethical and strategic reasons. So this commitment not only enhances the very fabric of our organizations, but also strengthens their resilience, ensuring a more inclusive, enduring, and prosperous future. All right, time for questions. So I see one here, would love to share how DEI program managers working with and leveraging L&D teams has been successful, helping teams build together and not reinvent the wheel. So L&D, I'm assuming means learning and development, Zach, in that context? Yes. Yeah, so L&D teams within organizations are typically used for different advancement and building core competencies. I think L&D teams can also expand their menu of options that they provide in organizations. So really bridging the technical and core competencies with the DEI and cultural awareness. And I think that's something that teams can work hand in hand to develop. And there's a lot of really good information out there in terms of how to integrate these learnings and make them real for individuals. And we see that day to day as we work with clients to create trainings that are relevant for their existing working environment. Dolores asks, do we have examples of small victories to share? Yeah, so if I think about DEI programs that, if we go back to the point of doing more with less, I think building employee champions and creating the space and the opportunity for employees to take a leadership role in driving inclusive culture has shown really great impacts for organizations. It's always backed by leadership, like senior leadership buy-in, because the tone needs to be set from the top. But essentially, when people are living these values day to day and don't just see DEI initiatives as a side of desk thing, they're more empowered to bring in these practices into their day-to-day lives. The other really great win story is around mentorship and sponsorship programs. So we shared a statistic earlier around how visible minority employees are more likely to say that mentorship improved their career trajectory. We know that specifically dominant groups, I think Anya mentioned, this is white heterosexual males without a disability, tend to have certain networks or connections in the industry or in the workplace. Creating inclusive mentorship and sponsorship creates avenues for others, but it also creates a two-way learning mechanism for senior leaders to mentor emerging talent. And that has yielded really, really good outcomes, both for the individual, but also for setting up people for success and also creating a diverse talent pipeline when it comes to succession planning. Where are your last stats taken from? So I'm assuming that is the last slide that we shared. These came from the 30% Club. I can share a link with folks in the chat, or perhaps I can ask Kate to do that. I believe that's slide 46. If we can just share the data point there. So Zach, how have we seen these teams work together effectively, since L&D can be often responsible for coaching and mentoring? I think this varies by organization and how it's set up. What we've seen is L&D typically is situated within HR. They do focus on coaching and mentoring, and primarily for senior leaders, as they're looking at emerging talent to go into executive positions, I think there's a possibility, again, to expand the scope of work that L&D teams take on. And first off, by building their expertise through education and awareness on key topics such as allyship 101 and conscious bias, fair management, inclusive leadership, and then having I think the most effective way is honestly training the trainer. So building their capability of the L&D team in-house and having them relay that information throughout the organization through a train the trainer model. So Veronica, in your experience based on data at hand, should DEI be in the hands of HR or should it be in a separate entity reporting to the highest level of the organization? That is an excellent question. So you're right, it absolutely sits in HR just because that's where employee data is typically housed through your HRIS system. And so it can be housed in HR, but the strategic imperative around DEI efforts should actually, well, we've seen success when it reports into the CEO. We've seen that executive support and accountability for these metrics, for these outcomes, for moving the needle has been advanced more or been a higher priority when it reports into an executive role such as the CEO. So it really depends on the size of your organization and where you are on your DEI journey, but it's a really, really good question. Anyone else have any questions here? I know we have a couple minutes. Okay, what are the day-to-day actions you take as a leader to foster inclusion? Okay, so there are a couple of actions that I would take day-to-day to foster inclusion. One is just getting to understand and know my employees and how they identify and also the various challenges they may face. So in our diverse workforces, we have different age groups, we have different statuses in terms of whether people have children, whether they're caregivers, whether they require, physical accommodations or religious accommodations. And I think the first step is really understanding who your people are and understanding through an equity lens that different people will require different things from me as a leader. And so as an example, when I'm working with new teams, I will start off with a team charter to understand goals and expectations. We'll also seek to understand what their development goals are when working on a specific project or just for their role in general, and also figure out what the best way to provide feedback, so their preferred feedback mechanism. And so that's one way. Another way is through frequent touch points. It's important to keep your workforce engaged and really get to know people as individuals. And so through frequent touch points, you can then start to assess, based on what you told me early on at the team charter, how are you advancing or progressing? What are some challenges you're facing? And whether there are any things that I can do as a leader to support them through that, whether it's through investing in additional education, creating more flexibility for them as they navigate specific challenges, and so on. So there are a lot of leading practices in terms of how to do this, but I think knowing your teams is at the crux of that. And then obviously looking at fair management practices to ensure that bias, which all of us have in one way or another, doesn't come through and create disparities within a team. Is it possible to get the sources of all the data points used in the presentation? Yes, we can share that after the session. So we'll compile a list of sources. And I believe we are at time. So thank you everybody for your questions. I'd like to pass it back to Anya to keep us going.